Who's your favorite class?
Right.
Whoa.
Hey guys, it's not Wednesday. I wanted to say happy Wednesday, but it's actually Tuesday.
It's National Nurses Week.
It is National Nurses Week. That's
about
right.
that?
That's right. Happy Nurses Day. Get your pulse checked. So we got the great Pam. She's over everything of financial aid. In fact, I've learned more from her in probably 20 years of doing this. I remember when we first met, actually. Do you remember me going up there and talking to you the first time I met you?
You were very enthusiastic, yeah.
Kind of goes away.
We'll see.
But we wanted to bring Pam on here and just talk a little bit about, and we don't handle financial aid. We really don't get into any of the specifics. But I thought it would be good to hear from her from the time that someone concludes an application, does the commitment, and then we're kind of transitioning them over for the overview, NSLDS, those type of things, on some things that she's found to make it easier for the student that maybe we can work on to ensure that they flow well when they visit their financial aid officer, the paperwork they have to bring in, so maybe they have a kind of a knowledge of that. I know one thing, Pam, when I grew up in admissions, they used to always tell me to talk in third person in admissions. Never talk specifically about them, but you can talk about various ways of paying for it and things like that. So what's your thoughts on that? Any advice on that? How we can do better at what we're doing? Just some of the pitfalls you're seeing as you work here in the home office that not necessarily are admissions related, but how we can definitely help the process better from our role in admissions.
Yeah. Well, I think first and foremost, financial aid is scary.
Yeah.
It's confusing. There's tons and tons of data that a student has to provide and doesn't understand why, and then we say, oh no, now we need this.
Yeah.
But I gave you, right? But then you opened another door. So it just seems like a never-ending process and a big quagmire. Probably the most helpful thing with a student is to let them know that this is something that most everybody goes through. It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But you'll survive.
It's a necessary evil.
It's right. It's a very good way to pay for school.
Yeah.
Particularly if you qualify for free money that you don't have to pay back. You'll learn more about that in financial aid.
Yeah.
And you just got to pay attention to those details.
So when you say that, and I love, because money is always, it's a tough subject, right? Mm-hmm. Especially when you're in education, because there's nothing tangible. They're in a way they feel like they're paying for something and it's intangible to them.
And they're not going out the door thing.
Yeah, they're not walking out with something. Maybe a magnet. Yeah, maybe that. Right. So in your experience, what are some things you've seen from like DOAs or just working with admissions that you're like, you know what? I like how that's done versus maybe, you know what, that could go down a path we don't want or items like that?
I think probably the most important thing is to make it feel natural. This isn't a strange thing that you student have to do that nobody else has to do. This is the norm for students.
Right.
You're a student. Welcome to our world. And we're going to drag you into it. We're bringing you in and we're going to walk you through it. We're not just going to push you in the closet and say, fill all this out and come out when you're done. We're going to help you fill this stuff out and you're going to get through it. And in the end, you will have a very comfortable feel for being able to afford this education for this program.
And one thing I used to always say when I was a DOA is I always say, we want the student applicant to start school not thinking about money. They need to think about their studies. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We want to make sure, and that goes to the old adage, a week out from the start, how you manage that versus 5 weeks from the start, to make sure we have enough time to do the things that we need to do so they're packaged, you know what I mean, successfully, so they don't have to worry about those items and then we're chasing them down while they're in class and things like that.
Sure.
Have you found that to be helpful? Are there things you've seen to do differently? Or?
It is. I do think that students that enroll at the last minute probably have a little bit harder time just because there's condensation of that period of time.
Yeah.
You got to get a lot of things done in less time. But still, it's a process that can be completed successfully. The most important thing to remember is to ask a question if you're not sure about something.
Yep.
Ask financial aid, your admissions. I'll say, I'm working on this form and I just don't understand this or why. And we'll get them through it.
Yeah.
the essentially there's an application that everybody does,
Right.
and then sometimes the student has to provide support for that. By support, we mean it might be a tax return, it might be a worksheet that you have to fill out saying these are the people that live in my house, and this is income that we had, whatever. It depends
Right.
on every situation.
And it's not meant to like I hear all
It's
that.
not to
it's
be
not meant
invasive.
to invasive and
Right,
investigate them. It's supporting documentation because you're using taxpayer money, and we just want to make sure that everything's
Exactly.
in order.
And one of the best ways to avoid having to deal with a lot of that is to use that DRN process in
DRN, help me with that.
data retrieval, DRT, sorry, data retrieval tool.
Okay.
When the student is completing the FAFSA, there's a point at which they can say, I filed a tax return, grab that stuff from the IRS and put it in my application.
And that's something they'll do with financial aid, is that
That's
right?
in the FAFSA
That's
application.
part of the FAFSA process,
Online.
right? Talk to me a little about EFC. Now, sometimes we will use EFC. I know in the past, maybe not here, but you'll have a 0 EFC or a 500. And can you just, for those that may not know, can you explain what the EFC is and what it represents? I know it's not a perfect science,
Yeah.
but yeah.
The EFC is the expected family contribution
Okay.
in financial aid parlance. Where it comes from is it's the end result of that application the student did. The department has a very complicated formula that looks at income, household size, which is number of people in the house being supported on this income, how many people going to college, what sort of assets do you have. Believe it or not, there's a pretty, depending on income level and age of the parents, there's a level of protection.
I didn't know
Yes. It has to do with how much asset protection the student has. And by
Okay.
protection, they mean we're going to ignore this because you're this old. And you're not
Gotcha.
real young and have plenty of time to amass wealth, whatever. So it is a pretty sensitive formula, believe it or not. And all that goes through the number crunching process in financial aid vapor out there. And what comes out is that estimated family contribution or expected family contribution. That figures into rules that financial aid has about how much a student can receive in aid per academic year, which is a 30-week period, and also is affected by their enrollment status, if they're full-time, part-time, whatever.
Yeah, because it could be more money versus less money.
And you sort of alluded to it with 0 versus 500. The lower the EFC, with 0 being the lowest, the better in terms of qualifying for grant money.
Okay.
That EFC really largely drives the grant money, your Pell and with us SCOG. Secondarily, it drives, there are cases where a student's EFC is really high, typically a dependent student with parents that are, well off, maybe a doctor or something like that. And it may affect their subsidized loan eligibility.
Okay.
Only in a small way, in that it may shift some funding from going from subsidized to unsubsidized. The most important,
I get it. Yeah.
It just shifts which bucket it comes out of.
Because that would tell someone, okay, you should have this money to contribute to your education, and the higher it goes up, the lower the scale will
The
go
less,
down for
quote, help you need.
Yeah, so it's like a balancing act, I guess, with the, okay.
And it's important to remember that cost of attendance is not just your tuition and fees. When the department's calculating that EFC, they're thinking about, I still got to pay rent, I got to eat, I got to drive my car. This is all stuff.
I don't think people remember that
I don't
either.
think they realize it. They don't.
say
And
that
they
one more
see
time,
that number and go, oh, I can't pay that
That's
much.
right, that's right.
Has nothing to do with what we are going to expect you to put down in front of us.
Because of the other variables. So I know we have gap financing. Is there, how should we as an admissions person set them up for success? I've heard various ways of doing it. I love this the honest way, you discuss it and let them work with financial aid. But is there a way that you like admissions to discuss that before they go to financial aid, or is there anything with that gap
With
financing?
gap financing?
If they need skin in, and I call it skin in the game, but let's, their financial aid will get them here, but then they need, $500 a month, or something like that to compensate for that non-covered.
Probably the best way to approach that is to just make the student aware that it is possible, from possible to likely, depending on what they qualify for in grant money again, that they're going to be looking at having beyond federal funding, another source. The key is to know that it's out there. We
It's an
do.
option.
There are other funding sources. Yeah, we refer
right.
to them as funding sources, options.
Okay.
But it's important that everybody understands that this is, again, is not unusual. This is the norm.
See, I feel when you say it like that, and I get all excited. We do, like in admissions, we get to the financial aid part, and that's the part we get all nervous on. Okay, now it's going to be blown. You know what I mean? We're like, but it's not. It's a natural function of a student. And I don't know why when we get to that
We
point.
almost apologize for it.
It is.
I don't understand.
Sorry, you have to do it.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. I do
Don't
it all the time. If you hear the
Yeah,
that's
sorry.
what it is. But they do. They can tense up at that part. Or they'll just shove it in financial
But
aid.
no, we shouldn't. You know what that does, in my opinion,
Yeah.
and I'm not an admissions person, but I have been sold things, or people have tried to sell me things, and it's the same feeling. As soon as you start wheedling and trying to talk me into this, making me feel good about it and apologizing for it, I get suspicious. But if
That's a
it's
good
a
point.
mindset, it's all about, hey ho, this is what we all do. We go here, and then we go here, and then we go here, and we do this part and this part and this part. Everybody has one of these.
It's a matter of fact.
It is a course. It's part for the course in education.
So that's
It's
a
not
huge
something
takeaway
to
from this.
apologize for or feel bad about.
Yeah.
You know?
It's just a matter of fact process, and it's part of that experience.
It's how it's done.
Now, do you find, and this is, we may not find this here, so I'm just bringing up stuff that I've just seen in the past. One of the things that used to always frustrate my financial aid colleagues is applicants that would go in there and had no idea tuition. They may have thought it was free. They don't have wait a minute, I got to pay for this? Wait, they just told me, it's all roses and everything else.
What do you mean? Yeah.
Do we have that here, and is there a way to combat that, or are we pretty good with that?
I do not think we have. There are going to be some people who are just so overwhelmed by the process. It doesn't matter what you say.
No matter what.
How you say it. They're going to go into the next room and go, I don't know what I'm doing. I didn't know. Where am I? I used to sit in that chair across from students, and one of the first things I would say to them, oh, congratulations. What program are you getting into? I'm looking at the enrollment agreement. Oh, it looks like medical assisting. Okay.
Their eyes are just...
Yeah, they're deer in the headlights. There's just dead silence, crickets over here. They're just overwhelmed by so much stuff. So we have to walk a really fine line between 11 million disclosures we have to make and how much can a person take in? Especially if it's toward the very start of school. If you're getting close to that crunch time.
The
you're
week
going,
out, they've had an hour interview, then they want to sit
and
over
you
here.
go, over here, okay, over here.
So we have to remember that. And it can't be our needs, right? It can be,
No, it's the student, if you rush them through, that's when they start, okay, we're in too big a hurry here. Have the student feel committed to the process and to really follow through. Human beings are human beings. They have a tendency to put off and all those things. I get that. But it's a really fine line. You got to finesse between, come on, here we go, and not dragging and kicking and screaming.
Right?
Yes.
It's the matter of fact. I think when you don't make it an issue or make it a scary part, it's just a natural progression that we, when we're working with an inquiry, it's just part of the process going through, right?
Yes, it's all part of the process.
That was good. One more for you, dependent students. That seems to be we call it the buying committee, but they're such a vital part of that financial pathway for the student.
First of all, let me just kind of describe what a dependent student means, because sorry.
Don't worry.
Let's put it on the other side next time.
It took me 7 times to figure out not to...
Here's me sitting on my
No,
hands.
you're right.
I had a problem with that when I first started school. Way back in the dark ages, they still had financial aid. And I applied for aid. It was I was out of high school for about 10 years before I went back to school.
Yeah.
So I was very much like our students.
Yep.
I'm not some little 18-year-old kid that mom and dad pushed over
Got
here
some
for
history behind
continued
you,
raising. Been on my own
Yeah.
since I was 17. What do you mean I'm a dependent student? I was furious. I said, no, I'm not. I have my own apartment.
If anybody's independent, I'm independent.
They don't get any more independent, okay? But the rules in financial aid are different. Anybody who's under a certain age, 24, right, who doesn't have a child, who's not married, who doesn't meet those questioned criteria in the application is, for financial aid purposes, considered dependent. Why? Because the federal government believes that a parent has an obligation to contribute to a student's education up to a certain point.
Right.
That's where that comes from. Therefore, the parent's information is considered, along with the students, to come up with that EFC.
Got it.
Now, there's good and there's bad with dependent in terms of ease of processing. Okay, if you're dependent, that means now we got to get mom and dad involved.
Correct.
And if you're 20-some years old and estranged from your parents or whatever, that makes it difficult. I
Yeah.
get it. I had to go to my dad and say, Dad, I need your tax return. What do you mean you need my tax return? Well, I don't really understand it. I don't know, but they think I'm dependent, and
Yeah.
well, can I mark out all? Sure, you can do that. So anyway, for his purposes, I think he had to. Anyway, it doesn't matter. He had to provide us, and he wasn't happy about it, but he did. Same thing with our
Sometimes
students.
it's unlikely too. A lot of the students that we have,
A lot of parents won't.
they won't do it.
A lot of times, either A, one or two things is going on. A, they don't have a good relationship with the student. The student may have done this several times and flaked out and said, no, I'm not
Yeah.
going to do this again, or they just are estranged. B, the parent doesn't want to be obligated to something that the student's doing who is now an adult in that parent's eyes, too.
Because they consider them independent.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
What do you mean you're dependent? No, you're not. You need to go tell them they got it wrong.
You've been on your own since you're 17, 18.
Exactly. I kicked you out when whatever,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it's that rule with the government that drives it. So anyway, but the good news is, with a parent, it can go one of two ways. And the only thing it really brings into the situation is that Parent Plus loan. Otherwise, the aid is the same, except for the dollar
Doesn't
amount in
change,
loans.
right? Yeah.
Exactly. It's very similar. It just reduces a little bit what the student can borrow and increases and adds the parent's lot. So that's great because the parent can cover all the balance if they're willing, whatever.
Right.
And if the parent is denied, well, then we get that denial and say, okay, now we can treat you like an independent student. And so, no biggie.
And then it moves on.
Yes.
So what is a personal judgment? What does
Professional
that mean?
judgment.
See, I didn't say
It's
it
okay.
right. Personal professional.
Professional judgment is a very vague, broad area of discretion, if you will, that aid officers have, but it has guidelines. In other words, we can't just say, Charlie,
Just stroke
you're
the line
independent, right?
and you're done.
Ta-da! Glad you asked. There are categories of students who have severe situations. For instance, a dependent student who is out on their own. Maybe there was abuse in the family, something like this. Isn't somebody got in a fight with mom and dad and
This is like
hit the road.
documented
This
history
is
of abuse.
severe, yes, protracted, prolonged kind of situations that are documentable and can allow for the aid officer to make a decision to treat a student as independent. There are also other kinds of things that we can do called professional judgment that fall in that. We have a special and unusual circumstances form. Parents provide their income, say, yeah, but I'm not working now.
Like something changed or something.
Dramatic change in income. So there are some, limited, but there are some areas that we have a little bit of discretion. Again, still, we have to walk within very
But it's a tool to use very
specific guidelines.
sparingly,
Yeah.
right? We
Oh
wanna
yeah, if you
use
get
that
in
for
the
very
habit,
specific.
the department targets you for program review.
And I've been to schools that kind of did that, but I like that we were very specific, and it's not, what would you say? Not the word would be, I guess. It's got to be severe circumstances and also documented. And I think that's a piece that people don't understand too. They have that, but they don't have the documentation
Right.
to support it, which
Yeah.
can make it a little
And
dicey.
I'll tell you this, I tell everybody in training and whoever I meet with, I'll fight to the death with an auditor if I think I'm right.
Yep.
Give me documentation to support it. And if I think we're right, I'll do it. And I'm not going to break the rules, but if I feel like
Well, if
we're
you got the
following, operating within the spirit of the law, then I will fight. Because ultimately I feel like it's my job to make sure we don't ever have to send money back.
Yeah, because that's not
So-
what we want. We
right.
want RT and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, we're kind of out of time. There's some
Oh,
good
dear.
stuff in here, so I hope you guys are listening. And please get with your financial aid. The DOAs, that's a team. That's our graduation team working together.
Yeah.
Can
You don't
you-
have to know financial aid,
No,
but
no,
you
no.
have a good relationship with financial
There
aid.
it is, and that's
so you
the
can
thing.
trot down the hall and say, hey, they asked me one, I just cannot answer. Could you stick your head in for a
And
minute,
it's
whatever.
part of the process, which should mean two people. That's a process together.
yes.
You have your expertise, we have our expertise, and together we're that graduation team.
And
So
don't
if you
fear
could
it.
give us one piece of advice, just anything you can think of in admissions that you can say, you know what, this is the advice that I would love all to hear. What would that be?
I really think what I said before, it's make it normal.
That's
It
good,
is.
though.
don't make it a big deal, because it's not. The financial aid is not something to fear. It's not something to be ashamed of, embarrassed about, or anything else. It's a normal part of the process of going to school.
Because I remember I had an old mentor that used to say a student will do what you need them to do if they're committed to the process.
Right.
And we just have to remember that in ourselves. If they're truly committed, then you don't have to worry about the little magic bullets.
Because they want to do. Okay, what do I got to do? Point me in the right direction, I'll go.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
Perfect.
Maybe when I get back upstairs, I'll think something. I'll call you.
Thank you so much, though. I really do appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thanks, guys. Hopefully you thought this was useful. I believe it was useful because I even learned a couple things in here, which is really good. And I love working with Pam, so I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Likewise. Thanks for
you
having
guys
me.
have a great Tuesday. Have a great rest of the week. It is May start week, so finish strong, and we'll look forward to June. We'll see you guys later.
Bye.
Let me know if you have any questions, and we can go from there. Appreciate your time.